Forse non ci sta. Non voto pure io.
Welcome back to the series documenting my journey to Venice. I hope you're ready for some razzling church-going action. After disembarking the Vaporetto, I found myself near Piazza San Marco, the beating heart of Venice, with the mighty Palace of the Doge looming down the street from where I was. I could talk plenty about that building, but I had already prepaid a ticket for the day after, so I'll leave it to the next episode. The lion you see here is the Lion of St. Mark, or San Marco in Italian, the ever-present symbol of Venice. It's literally all over the city. See how many you can find in this video, and comment below. There won't be a prize as I won't count them myself, but why not have a go anyway? Saint Mark is the patron saint of Venice, and the namesake of the Basilica, the Piazza, and the whole Sestiere, as well as a whole slew of other things. As one of the 4 evangelists and the supposed author of the Gospel that bears his name, he is one of the big ones, as far as saints go. He replaced the earlier Saint Theodore as Venice's patron saint. The original church of the Piazza was that of Saint Theodore, and the first ducal palace was built next to that. The reason Venice changed its patron saint was because of a dispute with the Patriarch of Aquileia, who wanted to boss over the whole lagoon. The loyal to Venice Patriarch of Grado did not agree. The Aquileian Patriarch was a Frank, an enemy of Venice. The Franks had recently attacked and been repelled by the city. The Patriarchate of Aquileia was supposedly founded by St. Mark, and the one in Grado also claimed descent from this. The church as a whole was big in those days, and being patriarch meant you legally owned a lot of stuff in and around Venice. Thus, the battle was on to prove who was right. As it happened, St. Mark himself had been bishop of and was buried in Alexandria, which had been conquered by the Muslims. 2 Venetian merchants, Buono and Rustico, who were clandestinely trading in the city even though there was an ongoing ban, convinced the priest of St. Mark's church to spirit the saint's body away to Venice. Skeptical at first, the priest doubted that the saint wanted to leave his bishopric for some swampy islands in Italy, but the merchants explained that the saint had, in fact, stopped at those swampy islands on his way to Aquileia. The Venetians were thus the firstborn, if you will, of the Patriarchate. Convinced, and I guess they didn't really need much of a push as Caliph al-Mamun had already decided the church should be dismantled. They smuggled out the body, cleverly replacing it in its tomb with the body of the less important Saint Claudia. They got it to the ship, but the Muslim authorities had been alerted that something was afoot, so to avoid the body being discovered, Buono and Rustico hid it in a basket and covered it with raw pork, which the Muslims refused to touch as they searched through the ship. On their way back to Venice, the relics saved the merchants from various mishaps, as relics tend to do in medieval literature. When they finally reached home, they were received with great fanfare. Venice had proven they were chosen by St. Mark, and the Patriarch of Aquileia could suck it. In the end, the city opted not to keep the relics with the Patriarch of Grado. Grado was too far from Venice and too close to Aquileia. Instead, they kept them in the ducal palace. Soon a small chapel was built next to it to house them, and this so-called private chapel of the Doge soon grew into the magnificent basilica before me. I gawked at and marveled over it for a little while. It really looks like something out of fantasy. It's surreal. The architecture and decorations are inspired by, and in several cases literally taken from, Byzantium. I'll touch more on that later. It's also got Islamic, Romanesque and Gothic influences. After my trademark photo, I opted to go inside. My original plan was to do all the museums and the church the next day, but that would, in hindsight, have been way too exhausting. Entering the church went fine, but after paying for my ticket and passing through security, the controllants had to tell me, with quite an air of irritation, that I had to remove my hat. I'm usually good about things like that, but today I was just a dumb tourist instead. The inside of the church somehow looks even larger than the outside, and it's covered in golden mosaics of saints, angels and other biblical figures. My filming techniques does not do it great justice, but I hope my photos will help remedy this. The floors I particularly like. Intricate geometric patterns of marble stone dating to the 12th and 13th centuries. When I felt done sightseeing in the church, I decided to go up to the museum. Is it open? Thank you. It's got its own entry fee. The sun shining in on the mosaics looks awesome. Hello. Hello. Ticket for one. Grazie. Now, when it comes to museums, I can dawdle for hours. I'm the kind of guy who reads every sign. And indeed, I did do so here too, but I cut a lot of it away, since it didn't make great film. The dim lighting didn't help either. For the first part, there was a showcase of older preserved mosaics, like this one with Mother Mary and her baby Jesus. Or the one behind her here with St. John the Baptist. Of course, there's King David and King Solomon. And others. Here now at the end of the corridor are some seriously impressive artifacts. Remember how I mentioned that some decor of the church is literally taken from Byzantium? These bronze horses are the prime example of that. The Cavalli di San Marco, or Horses of St. Mark, once adorned the Hippodrome in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. Unlike the body of St. Mark, the horses were not whisked away to avoid destruction after Muslim conquest. Rather, these are a result of Venice's own conquest. The story is so wild you can almost not believe it actually happened, the so-called Fourth Crusade. So, in 1204, the forces of Christendom prepared for a new crusade to the Holy Land. The Crusaders, mostly Frenchmen, decided to employ Venice to see to their transport, since they did not have any kings who were able to assemble their own fleets this time, unlike in the Third Crusade. That's the one with Richard the Lionheart, by the way. The Doge at this time was the 97-year young Enrico Dandolo, a shrewd and crafty ruler. He hammered out a contract where Venice were to ferry and feed 33,500 crusaders and 4,500 horses, and to build a war fleet to crush the Muslim navies, in exchange for a huge per capita payment. But only a third of the Crusaders showed up in the end, and they defaulted on their payments, putting Venice in a very difficult financial situation, since they had built and outfitted the navy almost from scratch. As a compromise, Doge Dandolo suggested the Crusaders pay what they could, and Venice would loan them the rest in exchange for spoils from the conquered cities. And the Crusaders would also help them quash the pirates operating from Zara, a Catholic city, now known as Zadar in modern Croatia. It was too late in the year to sail to the Holy Land anyway. The ancient Doge himself piously joined them on this adventure. Since Zara was very much not a city of infidels, the Pope was furious and threatened excommunication. This almost saved Zara, but Dandolo got his way through and the city was seized. The Crusaders were in a bind because they had done something very impious and got furious at the Venetians in return. In a twist of fate, envoys from the German prince/king Philip of Swabia showed up and asked for help on behalf of the Byzantine Prince Alexius, whose father, the Emperor Isaac II, had been ousted and blinded by his brother. That is Alexius' uncle, who confusingly was also named Alexius. In this deal, the Crusaders would be granted help in the Holy Land and be paid enough cash to pay off Venice, and then some. And the Pope would get power over the Orthodox Church. Everyone was happy, but Dandolo was skeptical. The new emperor was a trading partner after all, and they tend to look down on military invasions. But he soon came around to the idea. And so they set sail to the city of world's desire, to Constantinople, leaving Zara as a pile of rubble. The people of Constantinople did not rise up to overthrow the tyrant as they had hoped, and so they had to attack, and almost failed. In a Hail Mary move, Dandolo had his galley sail forward with him at the front, inspiring his fellow Venetians to land and take over a wall. The Constantinopolites decided the fight was not worth it and ousted Alexius III, who fled the city with a load of treasure. The blind Isaac was restored and his son was crowned as Alexius IV. But this new emperor was unable to pay the full sum that had been promised, and his crude attempts to get the money soon turned his people against him. The emperor decided to simply not pay his allies in the end. This was a bad move. The Venetians and the Crusaders conquered the city. This launched the Francocrazia, the period where the rulers of Byzantium were French and Catholic instead of Greek and Orthodox, and Venice got away with a sizable loot, including the Four Horses, as well as direct control over many Greek islands. Venice now had an empire of its own. However, they still got excommunicated. Now, you might notice there were copies of the horses outside of the church as well. These are just that, copies. The real ones are the ones on the inside. The view from the balcony gives an impressive sight over Piazza San Marco. And here you can see the pillars of the Molo again. The Lion of St. Mark to the left and St. Theodore slaying a crocodile to the right. And of course the Ducal Palace. But more on that in the next episode, as I said. For now, let's just enjoy that facade. I love how the parts not facing the public are just naked brickwork. The great brick tower is San Marco's bell tower, or in Italian, the Campanile. It fell down in 1902, but it got better. The blue building is the Torre dell'Orologio, the clock tower, from 1502, but it had some renovations over the years. Due to the flooring of the balcony, you really have to watch your steps. It also felt kinda slippery. That's a long way down. At the end, there were these scale models and drawings of the basilica and its construction. They were really cool. In some of them, they showcased the basement that I totally forgot actually existed until I rewatched my footage.
Then how did we get in there?
And of course, you exit through the gift shop. In all, it's a very impressive church. It's a must-see if you're in Venice. Just be mindful of any dress codes, and the museum is well worth a visit too. There's also the Pala de Oro, which I didn't view. Like the museum, it had a separate entrance fee. After the Basilica and a long day of sightseeing, I felt it was high time to return to my hotel and to find something to eat. I left the sun-drenched piazza on the opposite side from the Basilica, through the arches under Museo Correr, but I was visiting that the day after, so I'll leave any comments until then. Right outside, I faced one of Venice's ubiquitous mask stands. It's a must-get souvenir. I didn't get one though. From what I understand, there are artisanal masks being made in Venice, but the ones on the souvenir stands all over the city are just mass-produced. I went on my merry way through a street with shops whose wares probably cost more than my entire stay. They had everything a millionaire could want, haute couture, accessories, jewels, and I assume clothes for horses. Fancy a breakfast? Tiffany & Co.'s got a branch here. I was now by the church of San Moise. What I was trying to do now was getting to the Accademia bridge. From what I had gathered from my map, it should just be a straightforward zigzag through the alleys and street from San Marco. Theoretically, I should just have to follow the yellow signs marked All'Accademia. I can't stress enough how I love these little canals with buildings looming over them. Next, I found myself on a, for Venetian standards, very wide and long street. It was soon followed by more classic winding alleys. Oh, sorry. Near collision. Don't run around corners, kids. This white church is Santa Maria del Giglio, or more commonly Santa Maria Zobenigo. The facade is remarkable in that it sports no biblical or Christian imagery whatsoever, but carvings representing Antonio Barbaro's conquest for Venice instead. You'll also notice that I now somehow was lost. The open campo and absence of any signage threw me off considerably. I knew I should end up on a campo when I got to the Accademia bridge, but this felt too soon. An off-camera look at my map set me on the path again. You might think that if there was no signage to the contrary, just keep on going straight ahead. This time it would have been correct, but as I discovered on my last day, this was not always the case.
Guarda, parlavi della poli e quindi Poli. X, dobbiamo far tappa qua. Dobbiamo far tappa qua. Poli di stenerie. Guarda che giro. Marco.
Nah, not eating now. Let's get to the bridge first.
Thank you so much for
By now, the fashion shops had made way for artist studios instead. Finally, I reached Campo Santo Stefano. Ponte dell'Accademia was down to my left. I decided to have a look around the restaurants to find myself a bite to eat first. I didn't. Instead, I wanted to get back to my room before finding food. I went over the huge wooden bridge. It probably gives one of the prettiest views of the Grand Canal, down to San Salute. The Accademia, from which the bridge is named, is both an art academy and an art museum that's run independently from it. Since 2004, the actual academy has moved to the other side of Dorso Duro, leaving just a museum in the huge building before me. It hosts a variety of famous Renaissance art, but most famously Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, though it's not usually on display. I wonder how large a proportion of Venice's population work as gondoliers.
quello può essere.
Once again, the notion of food enticed me. At this point, the last time I ate was breakfast at the airport in Sweden, unless you count the beer I had in Brussels. I wasn't overly hungry, however, and my desire to find a hotel was greater than my desire for food. I found this alley particularly striking, but the photo I took was just crappy. I just continued the meandering route to where the hotel should be. Notice the Plague Doctor outfit. The mask shop it's placed outside of is Kamakana, who were part of the revival masks had in Venice at the start of the 1980s. Masks were very important in Venice until Napoleon took over and outlawed them. Then for almost 180 years they were scarcely used. And now they're back with gusto. I wonder how much those spikes would actually deter someone climbing over that wall. I was not about to try though. A final consultation of my map. The route should be yet another set of winding alleys opening up to a small campo.
Check for your phone maybe, HCI. Just make it big.
I of course noticed how crowded the bridge was, and at first tried to look if there was some kind of side bridge, but alas, no. At first I thought it was some kind of wedding, but it was a photo op after a graduation ceremony. In fact, I was just outside of the Università Ca' Foscari. I weaved my way over the bridge.
Prima partenza.
Grazie.
Ogni tanto. Amore. Dico
And as you have it, a short stroll after the bridge, and a left turn, and there was my hotel. Good evening. How are you? I went up to my room to have a short recharge. Later, I went for a pizza. It was okay.